Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Welcome.
everybody.
Hello. And welcome to Life After Death and Beyond. It's a premiere podcast with myself, James and Praagh, and my good friend, Kellee White.
Hello, everybody. Hi, James.
Hey, Kellee, how are you,
I'm
darling?
great. How are you? I'm excited about today's show.
Our premiere show, the Life After Death and Beyond, which is, we've been working on this for a little while now. So it's a little bit different than our format before, but it's going to be incredible. And we have a very special guest, everybody. So we're very excited. We'll introduce her in just a second. Kellee, what have you been up to these days?
Well, life on the farm and finishing my book.
Oh, good. Yes.
So
book.
I'm all ready with my book too. So this is all an exciting time. And how about you? What have you been up to?
Oh, I'm just busy doing a little bit this, a little bit of that, and working on my school, the JVP School of Mystical Arts. I have that going, and that's busy with courses and so forth. And summertime is finally here in San Diego. Well, spring is finally broken in San Diego where I live. So that's been really fun. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, spring is beautiful here on the farm. It's stunning.
That's good. And Kellee, just quickly, so people who have just tuned in, who've never been the first time on this podcast, a little bit of your background as far as mediumship. You're a psychotherapist extraordinaire. I know that.
And I was, So for my background is that I was in the business world. I was in the corporate world. I was a senior vice president in the corporate world. And I had a traumatic brain injury. And as a result of the traumatic brain injury, I started seeing, for lack of a better word, dead people. Yeah. And I became a medium. And then later I went back to grad school and I became a psychotherapist. So I'm a spiritual medium and a psychotherapist.
And when I met you, were just a psychotherapist. And
no, I wasn't even that. When you met me, you were helping me with my coming out of my brain injury, literally, and helping me become a medium, helping me how to work with spirit. And
I kept on saying to you, Kellee, you're a medium. You're a medium. Mm-hmm. I got to finish my degree. I got to get my. And you talk about that in your new book, which will be coming out sometime this year, which we'll talk about. We'll have a podcast on that. But so you've been doing mediumship now psychotherapy for how many
mediumship years? For about 20 years and psychotherapy for about 15. And the combination of the two really works well for me.
Wow. It's great. Very, very good. Well, tonight we have a very special guest here who been around for a little while and talk about an interesting career, a spiritual medium, and would like to invite her in right now, Suzanne Geisemann. Suzanne Geisemann, world-renowned medium extraordinaire. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Suzanne just came out with the new book, The Awakened Way, which comes out right now. It's right now on any Amazon or any of the book places you can go to. And Suzanne, going back to career, and you've been a medium for how many years have you been doing mediumship?
I started in 2009.
2009.
Yes.
Okay. And Suzanne, it's an incredible career. And I'd like our guests to hear about your career going way back. Tell us about your background, where you started, and then how you found mediumship.
I'm very unexpected, a very professional background. I spent 20 years in the Navy, was a commander in the Navy, got to be a commanding officer, special assistant to the head of the Navy, and then ultimately aide to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's the head of the whole United States military. I flew on Air Force One with the president. And
on 9/11, I might add.
That was a separate day. Air Force One was another day. That 9/11, I was in the head of the Air Force's aircraft, but we were in the last aircraft in U.S. airspace, flying over Manhattan and returning to the Pentagon. Really memorable, to say the least.
And what was part of your duties in that role?
Well, people ask me if I was intuitive then, and I say that I didn't know I was intuitive, but my whole job was to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of the chairman. You had to know what he needed in every moment, make sure he had his schedule was kept on schedule, was where he needed to be. It was really funny to go up to other generals and admirals and say, I'm sorry, we have to leave now, even though I was the ranking officer. It was my job to make sure he was on track. He was the principal advisor to the president. So we got in some very interesting situations.
I mean, you really went from such a left brain place to such a right brain place.
Yeah, it's been a challenge activating the right brain and kind of sedating the left brain to find the balance. That's the thing that people remark now that I'm very pleased to hear. They say you're very grounded. So I didn't go totally in one direction or the other as a result. I'm just balanced the two, and it worked.
You've integrated it really well, Suzanne. Really well. You've integrated both worlds. And tell everybody when you first realized you had an ability as a medium, because it's in your book, The Awakened Way. But tell us a little bit about that. So interesting.
Well, actually, we were talking before we went on the air that my original mentor was Janet No Havoc, but I didn't meet her as a mentor. She asked me to write her biography. So I was sitting in the back of her class taking notes about her, but very interested in what she was teaching, that if you have systems, the spirit world will respect that and will give you what you want every time. And I'm sitting there with my left brain thinking, wow, that's reliable. That's really cool. You mean you can learn to be a medium? This stunned me. And she said, in fact, there's a spirit here. We need somebody to come up and see what you get. And nobody raised their hand. And I thought, oh, come on, I want to see who the spirit is. And Janet says, Suzanne, you come up here. and that was 2008. And I had been meditating every day for 2 years at that point because of the real reason I'm doing this work, the death of my stepdaughter. I was out to connect with Susan, not to be a medium for other people, but I didn't realize that my daily meditation to connect with Susan, even though I had not connected with Susan at that point, resulted in the ability, when Janet put me on the spot, to instantly go to that state that was just perfect for mediumship, just cleared the mind, was receptive, trusted because Janet trusted, and I just tuned in.
Wow. And that's what your left brain needed at that moment, just to trust.
Yeah. Yep. And I got through the nickname and the way this man passed of somebody in the class, I mean, Twinkle Toes. And this girl goes, that's my dad. And that was the turning point for me.
Wow. Tell everybody what happened with your stepdaughter, because it leads into a deeper conversation.
Yeah. She was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, 6 months pregnant, working on helicopters, was crossing the flight line, and out of nowhere, a bolt of lightning struck her. I mean, the storm was 10 miles away. It was not even raining. And people witnessed it, and she never regained consciousness.
Oh, it's just an unbelievable story. Yeah. And I read your book, and I love your book.
It's
and
incredible.
Everybody out there, it is so compelling. Your book is so deeply thought out. It's so good. It's got so much great information. And what I was just found fascinating was lightning seemed to be a theme through your life.
Yes.
With different things, even going down to your spirit guide with her name.
Yeah, Sanaya. Yeah, I talk about the lightning in my book, Messages of Hope, and I talk about lightning in the book, Wolf's Message, another young man in spirit who was killed by lightning. And then in The Awakened Way, I talk about my guides, who I ultimately found out their name that they gave me means flash of lightning. So it all comes together and how these things happen in the book, The Awakened Way. Yeah.
The intelligence of that world is amazing, isn't it? When you think about that, the intelligence of that world, put that all together. And if it's really a gift. I think it's always a gift as a medium to be able to be aware of the intelligence and how they do things. And like, my gosh, it's stunning. And it keeps you very humble. And it's like, wow, it keeps you in awe. And I think that's the secret of being, a good medium, is to always be in that sense of awe and humbled about it.
I'm glad to hear you haven't lost that either, James, because you were such a pioneer in this, and you were right up there with Mavis and Janet and the big mediums that I aspired to be like, but just held you and still do on a pedestal.
Thank you. Not throw up that pedestal, Suzanne. But
you haven't lost the awe. Is
no, I think that's it. When I do lose that awe, then I stop being a medium, because that you have to be. It's so vast and incredible. I mean, Kellee and I speak every day, and every day we talk about the different experiences of the awe, I guess, and it's pretty amazing.
Well, even to the point, James, and I was mentioning this before we got on, Suzanne, that Mavis Patilla, I just adored, loved Mavis so much. I mean, we all did so much. What a profound experience
Kellee,
she
for
had
those that
on my
don't know
life.
who she is, Mavis, a pioneer in mediumship. She was Gordon Higginson many, many years in the in Britain. She's a British medium, and yeah, she's been around for. She was around for many, many times. She just passed over, but what, 3
Kellee,
years ago?
About 2 years ago.
Did you know I wrote her biography, Kellee?
Droplets of God. I love the book. I have it, and I love the book. And she came to me in a dream Friday night, and I called James the next day. I said, "You won't believe this." Mavis came to me, and she gave me a big, big hug, and she said, she whispered in my ear, "Have fun with Suzanne. You guys are going to have a good time." She really wanted us to have fun here. And then right before we got on, right before we got on, we were talking about Mavis, and kaboom. That was kind of fun. You kind of, disappeared from this. So it was fascinating.
Yeah,
I think Mavis, I'm sure she told you that when she was with you, but I know she just believes in you and just helps you. I know, that she helps you, has to. You must feel her helping you sometimes.
I feel her hand on my back like she used to do for students. She never did it for me in class. Oh, look. I just
there she is.
Yes, I did.
I'm sure she's here.
Yeah. I don't think she'd miss this for the world.
No. So I want to talk a little bit about your book. Tell us how this is your 13th book.
Yes.
Really great. Now, would you have, when this book, to me, when I read it, I just felt channeled. And I was saying before we got on that you must have had a lot to write. And you said, no, I didn't edit much out, but it's full of incredible nuggets is the only way I can describe it. And how did this book come to you? And how did it work out?
It's been in the making for years, because I've been doing workshops for years, and my students would always say, well, what's the book for those of us who want to know how to connect with spirit? And then I would teach classes in what I call personal mediumship, because not everybody wants to be a medium, but they want to connect with their loved ones. And I use that as a way to show the other gift for mediumship is coming to know who we really are. The fringe benefit, the gift beyond mediumship is realizing I am the light. I am the spirit too. And I work that into my classes. So I've all along known I wanted to put the material from the classes in a book, the how-to book, because I wrote Janet's biography, Mavis' biography, my biography, and I wanted to do that how-to book. So when I sat down to do it, it just flowed, and spirit showed me how to organize it with information in part one, and all the exercises and practical tools in part two. So it was easy, just took time.
One of my favorite parts, Suzanne, was when you talked about the human BS, the human belief system. Because in my mind, belief systems will really harm people. And I loved that you explored that topic.
Oh, yeah. I love using that in workshops all the time. You got to get over your BS. Take a real good look at your BS.
Right.
And
right.
You talk about, the belief systems, and you said, if this is you, this is a bit too, you're in your human space, which is you don't like silence and fill it with music, television, or talking. So escapism, I guess. You turn to excessive sweets, alcohol, drugs, shopping, or other activities that feel better, even when you know they're not good for you. And you go on with a whole list of different things, which I'm sure everybody can relate to it. And is that saying, like, you run from others changed emotions, you feel shame, guilt, or unworthiness? I mean, you have a whole list here. And would you say it's when people are not dealing with their true self, or they're not? And one thing of the book, which is so great, you took the soul perspective, which is a major part of the book. So would you say this is when they're not coming from their soul perspective, these things?
That's the whole point of the book. Yes, indeed, James, because so many self-help books dive into these kinds of behaviors that almost all of us deal with at some point in our life. But this is not a self-help book. It's a higher self book. It shows you that the way to overcome these behaviors is recognizing that's human stuff. And if you can learn that you are also a soul and learn to make that shift and step back from the human aspect of you, then you find your wholeness, and you're not trying to fill the emptiness with all of those behaviors. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And does that also have to do with letting go of your own story?
Very much so. We recognize that we have to have a story to live this life, but we no longer get sucked into it as if that's our only truth.
And a question for you, which I think is kind of, we all deal with this. When you meet people on a day-to-day, right? And you have the sense of a soul sense, because I do that too. I kind of look at things from a soul perspective, and then there's the human, and then people come into our lives, and I'm just curious. Do you just not judging them, but be aware where they're at when you meet them?
Very much so. And in fact, we have a joke that the way I put it is, are we going to bring up the M word? The mediumship word.
Oh.
You know right away that people will be open to it or not. And we'll have dinner parties. We're meeting new neighbors tomorrow night and having them over to dinner. And we'll just kind of feel into it. Doesn't have to be part of the conversation, but if it is, we'll go.
You had a part in your book that cracked me up, and it was about you had some new neighbors you had just met, like I think Rick and Sarah, we'll call them. And I laughed so hard because it turns out that their daughters told them that she was God.
Yeah.
And you kind of didn't want to touch that because they were new and they didn't really know what you did. But I loved that your husband stepped in and said, well, how do you know she isn't?
Yeah.
I thought, what a great guy. He's got to be very supportive for you.
Very supportive, but that comment was so unlike him. He took over my role, and I just looked at him, and I didn't say a word. And who's to say she isn't God? He said, and I just looked at him, and he was kind of proud. He said, retired destroyer captain. And I waited till we got in the car, and I went, honey, you get it. It was a moment for sure. Yeah.
And are you finding that a lot of people are not aware, or not are sleepwalking, or I don't know? It's an interesting one thing, because I don't know. I like to be part of the.
More people are most definitely awakening to who we are and are willing to talk about it, and it's, to me, very, very hopeful. I mean, my Facebook page is a beautiful haven of love. It's something that the whole community radiates, instead of sniping at each other in a place where people share their one-sided opinions. It's this accepting group of people that understand we're on this page and we're on the awakened way together, because it's all about love. And I love that.
And it's like-minded people too, which is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you talk in the book about a soul's perspective. So what would you say to everybody about what is a soul's perspective?
Well, what do you think heaven is like? Just imagine that. You two know very well. But, from talking to all these souls, we know that we shed these bodies and we suddenly are just enveloped in love, aware that love is our true nature. So to get the soul's perspective, just imagine that you've shed the body. You are surrounded by love. And that is how the soul would react to anything. No judgment, not carrying around shame, guilt, or unworthiness, detached compassion when somebody else is in pain, so you don't get sucked into the drama. You just set the intention to be in soul awareness, and it just bubbles up because it's already part of us.
Yeah, it's true. And how would you describe consciousness? You talk about different levels of consciousness, the book. How would you personally describe consciousness?
Consciousness is a state of awareness that is our true state. That's the one thing that never changes. Even when when the body is asleep, there is still an underlying awareness that's keeping the body operating, that never dies. So it is the fundamental essence of all that is.
That's great. And I know, Kellee, you have a question. I just feel it.
Well, I find it, I love that you talked about when there's no other explanation for spirituality, or you can't figure out what it is, you call it an NOE, yes, which I thought was fantastic. An NOE, and no other explanation
I love
this,
that.
because this is what happens. I mean, there is no explanation other than it's spirit, or it's God, or it's
an
a shift in consciousness. Yeah.
I mean, people talk about NDEs, STEs,
right,
OBEs, but all of us have NOEs all the time. When I start workshops and classes, great icebreaker is to get everybody to get in 2s or 3s and share their NOEs. And you realize, yes, we all have these stories and we love to share them.
It's a great icebreaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there like some tips you can give on just quickly about like changing your soul's, getting to your soul's perspective? Are there certain examples you can give, like you teach in your book and also
Well,
in the classes?
the greatest phrase my guides gave me at the very beginning when they came through is to say the words, "Isn't that interesting?" Whenever anything goes wrong, little things like spilling your milk. Isn't that interesting? Big things like a car comes and smashes into your brand new car. Isn't that interesting? And it works for tragedies. It works for little things. It immediately takes you that step back into neutral awareness, witnessing what's going on instead of buying into the story. So when you say, "Isn't that interesting?" you could say it funny, like, "Oh, isn't that interesting?" Or very, carefully taking a deep breath. "Isn't that interesting?" And in that pause, now higher guidance can slip in and tell you what is a better choice than going crazy.
That's a
Right.
great point of view to have.
Yeah. It's that objectivity, which I think
Yeah.
is so important, that you're not being pulled into that drama, but you're being objective about it. And so, I often talk about it, Suzanne, with like it's a movie, you're watching a movie or a stage show, and you're watching it, you're not in it, but you're watching it, and you step back and see it. Wouldn't life be a lot easier if people had that perspective?
It's so easy to get sucked into the drama of what just happened. It's so easy to do that. And it really does take a state of consciousness to ask that question. And that's an important question.
Well, I had a conversation with a friend today because she'd been, I gave her an advanced copy of the book, and she noticed the story I told where I noticed all these people coming out of an actual movie, American Sniper, and they were all so depressed. And I thought, people paid money for that? And I realized that, just like you said, James, when we can see this life like a movie, we go to the movies knowing we can step out in the lobby if it gets too much. Right. Well, we souls came here to get on the stage knowing we could step out through practices such as meditation at any time and take a breather. So I gave myself the test to see, can I go to that movie and not get upset, not get sucked into the drama? And I did it.
Wow.
And I just stayed, and when in the awful parts, I just said, "Isn't that interesting?" And what was interesting was I found compassion for everyone in the movie, both sides of the conflict. The bad guys and the good guys were characters playing their roles, and that's what all of us are.
Yeah. And what do you think evil is, Suzanne?
Evil is ignorance of who we really are. The result of not knowing who we are causes us to do things that hurt people, and truly hurt people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're so funny, Suzanne, because I said to someone yesterday, I said, I think what things are, and I'm just talking to these two ladies, friends of mine. I said, people don't know who they are. And that's really the bottom line is, if one knew who they were, they would behave differently. So I'm so happy you're saying that, because I believe the same thing. They have to know who they are, or they try to be something they're not.
And then what happens is then it goes down generationally. The next generation picks it up, and the next generation. So it's so important that you're doing this work, Suzanne, and getting this message out.
And I know your book is, again, full of nuggets, but is there a workbook with your book? I was just curious.
Not yet, but I'm sure it's coming.
Oh, that needs to be happening. Yeah, because it is such a tool of teaching and inspiration that I think definitely a workbook is needed.
Well, actually, I went online 2 days ago and I pirated a workbook, put my name on the cover, and so happily Spirit helped me, and it's already been taken down. But the idea is out there, so we put a beautiful envelope around the book to protect it from anybody who would have anything but the highest intentions for it.
Yeah, it's difficult, but how very interesting.
Yeah.
And people they do all that sort of thing, hacking, and it's very interesting. They'll do a lot of it. Yeah.
That's the practical side. Now we look at something from the heart, and also take practical steps as humans to make sure that nobody cheats each other.
Yeah, very, very true. And regarding energy, what is your thought about energy?
Consciousness flows
Consciousness.
as energy information. And so I love when we interview people, when you ask the questions that we know the answers to already, but it's every single thought, every object has its own frequency. That's
frequency. Great.
Yeah. And so we just tune into that and discern the information in the energy. Our brains give it words, but our soul knows without words what energy is telling us.
Wow. Wow.
What is your definition of God? I love it. You talk about this in your book.
Well, I give it all kinds of different names in the book so that we don't get trapped into one definition. And my definition, I don't have one definition. So let me just see what arises right now. It is the all that is the ultimate wholeness.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Wow. The I am.
The I am.
The I am. Yeah,
that would include all of us then.
Yeah.
And it's just remembering that, huh? It's just remembering, the humans got to remember, since we come back in that valley of forgetfulness before we come into the body, isn't that kind of like opening up to that the memories of who you really are?
Yeah, I got into a little bit of a human mode last week, and I heard drop the story and rest as presence with a capital P. So that was the word for God in the moment, you know? So drop the story. If you drop the story, anything that comes after I am is story. Drop it all, and all that's left is peace and connection, which is love.
And did you have a trouble breaking a pattern when you were growing up with, as far as maybe a religious background or with a family?
I mean, right up until the last month, breaking a pattern of my mother saying
Really?
you know, you're not allowed to be angry. You can't be sick. You can't be sad. I mean, this has been a lifelong journey. And that's, you know, we can look back and be the victim, or we can find the joy as we set that aside, and life becomes ever more free and beautiful, and you feel that connection. So I'm loving life now.
Good for you.
And it is really living in the moment, isn't it? It's living each moment, because that's all we have, right?
And every time we work on ourselves, our connection with spirit gets better.
Yeah.
So
yes,
lately, I'm so grateful that it's just loving the flow.
You know, the reason I asked about energy, because you know, we all believe, I'm sure, the same thing here, but like attracts like. So if you bring up your energy and that joy and that love, you'll attract that into your life, into your space, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And I have a question for you here, which is kind of, you know, I have to ask this. When people come to you, you do privates, right? You do private readings with people.
Right.
And I don't know, what do you tell them? I don't know. What do you tell them happens after, like, their loved one? Like, how do you start your session in a way? Like, what do you tell them if it's someone that's never been to a medium before, knows nothing about life after death, maybe thinks you're crazy, whatever it is? What's your start?
First, I do have a read ahead for people who come to me, so I don't have to spend all that time telling them.
Very good.
Very good. Have basic awareness, so we can just get right to their loved ones who are standing here waiting to talk to them. But what I tell them is the test of any good reading is that you're going to leave here and say, oh my God, that was my loved one.
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, that's the goal. And then it can take it from there. If they're still here, what does that mean for all of us? That life is eternal, that love never dies. And so the evidence and the messages and capturing someone in spirit's essence is what will get them to say, that was them. Not, well, I think they might have had them, you know, not wishy-washy, but life-changing, rock your world, end the BS. It's just, this is real.
Because your specialty is evidence-based.
Yes.
Yeah. And you've done a lot of work with, I know, the science, Gary Schwartz, different organizations, bringing kind of science and spirituality together. Yeah. And
I love that.
Tell us about that, please.
Well, spirit came to me while I was reading one of Dr. Schwartz's books. His mentor, Susie Smith, dropped in on me in the living room, and she said, I had a dachshund too, like you. And I was like, what? And she says, you're going to work with Gary Schwartz. And I thought, how do I even contact him? And I reached out and he put me to the test. He said, if you're who you say you are, and if Susie Smith really came to you, I want you to ask her 3 questions. Tell me about the foxes. So really off the wall questions.
That's scary.
Yeah. And so I just went into meditation. I said, Susie Smith, he wants these answers. And I wrote down what she said. I sent him an email and he says, looks like you're Susie Smith's latest person. So here we go. And so he had me out to the University of Arizona several times and would give me fake names of people across the veil and say, get me Mary. And Mary was somebody with a completely different name. And I brought through 7 in one day the first time. And I was just awed. I went out and bought a piece of jewelry to celebrate. I don't even do that, but it was just like,
good for you.
wow, these are things that surpass any of my military accomplishments. To tune in and help humanity in this way, not just our country, but humanity to discover that mediumship, credible mediumship is real. You can do blind studies and validate in scientific, rigorous ways as much as we can, because you can't replicate the same thing every time.
Yeah.
That this is credible. That is a gift.
Yeah.
I was also tested at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, ions, with the skull cap on the head and all the wire.
Brain waves.
Yeah, to see what happens in the brain and doing mediumship. I am so happy to be part of scientific studies to show that this can be respected.
And a question I have for you is also interesting. It just popped in my head, so I got to ask that. What do you think about bringing them? What is your perspective now, if it's changed or not, about military, spirituality, war, spirituality? What's your take on that?
I feel that will unfold naturally. That, like skeptics, we can't force anything on anybody before they're ready. So you can't force a plant to grow. It has to be nurtured, watered, fertilized. So slowly, with ethical, credible mediumship, people will start to pay attention. I've shared this with some of my former military colleagues, and individually, they're very intrigued. They love it. They've had their own NOEs, but as a group, they're still, oh no. But it'll take a while.
How did you get into channeling? Tell everybody about what you do when you channel.
Well, with the daily meditation and connecting with Susan, which I ultimately, of course, did connect with my stepdaughter, Susan, I met my guides first, and I didn't believe in guides. I didn't believe in angels, but they convinced me with evidence over the years. And on my birthday in 2010, after a year of receiving a poem every day, and I never wrote poetry in the past, poem and meditation, wow. All of a sudden this powerful presence came in and they said, we are a collective consciousness of your guides. You will call us Sanaya. And that's what I ultimately found out was the name that means flash of lightning in Arabic. And never expected to be channeling, hadn't studied channeling, although I had an experience of merging so well with the spirit that they came through me with Mavis at the Arthur Findlay College, but it wasn't a class in channeling. It just unfolded naturally, and I couldn't help but share it with other people because I saw the effects on the audience. They could feel the love. They were changed by it. Some people were physically healed during the channeling sessions. It continues to happen to this day, so wow. I continue to channel.
Well, and would you call that, would it be any comparison to, I know altered states of consciousness, but like trance or?
It's somewhat conscious trance. So I stay away from the word trance. I don't know too many real trance mediums. Arthur.
Neither do I. Yeah.
But yet, if you can learn to get out of the way enough, then the real wisdom flows and the energy flows. So that's always my goal. And it gets deeper all the time. Yeah.
And as you progress, Suzanne, have you noticed that there are different band of guides or different collective consciousness of guides, or they stay the same? Or
they've stayed pretty much the same. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Wow. And what do you think you personally on this journey are working out, or what's it about? It's a weird question, but because each one of us as mediums, but what do you think your journey involves?
I have found that each of us is on the same journey to return to an awareness of our wholeness. So for me, it has been coming to be okay with what we call negative feelings. And so I'm really looking forward to the future now that I'm actually allowing myself to feel the not so positive stuff and dance with that.
That's very, very interesting, that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of being human, isn't it? Part of being that human experience.
Human experience, absolutely. Working through your own issues as you do this work.
Yeah,
Isn't it funny? I have a tickle in my throat as I say that. And the throat chakra is all about speaking your truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And working through your emotions. I mean, it sounds like you really did do this in your book. You talk about your going through your own set of emotions.
And there's a great practice in there for doing that. It's called the no fault practice.
Oh, tell us about that.
It's an acronym for 7 steps when something triggers you. And the funny part is the guides gave me the acronym. I have a lot of acronyms. That's a military holdover, right? NE, bless me method, no fault. And so I thought, no fault, that's like a divorce, right? So I go online to Google no fault divorce. And I got distracted. I got up from the computer and I turned around to my husband. I said, honey, if you happen to go on look at my screen and I'm looking up no fault divorce, don't get worried.
That's great. That's great. Wow.
That's very funny.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised one day if you do stuff more academic and some testing work with mediums. And would you like to do that someday? Like work with bringing, I don't know, evidential tests to mediumship, or bringing mediumship up to another level, if you will?
Well, my whole goal is to bring mediumship to a higher level. I love teaching students and really teaching them to insist the spirit world gives them good evidence or they won't do this work. I know that there are people who are now testing mediums in really laudable ways. They're doing it in such a way that, like Mark Ireland with Helping Parents Heal has a certification process, and he puts any medium that they recommend through the paces. And I love that.
Yes.
I tell people best way to find a medium is word of mouth.
Totally.
Word of mouth. And so if we want people to say, you can trust that medium and that medium.
Tell everybody about that organization, because they may have missed this.
Helping Parents Heal is so near and dear to our hearts, because having a stepdaughter cross the veil, and I know the pain our family went through. I saw my husband in a state I've never want to see him in again. But yet we've grown from that. But Helping Parents Heal is a support group where they allow the open discussion of the afterlife, and it makes a world of difference. I've seen other support groups where 20 years after the death of a loved one, especially a child, people are still miserable in their grief, and they walk in and it's just depressing. But Helping Parents Heal meetings they're bittersweet. There's the sadness, but you also see people who have found joy in their life again. And those who are new on the journey, they look and they say, maybe someday I'll find joy again. And they do. So everybody helps each other, Helping Parents Heal. And the group is so supportive of mediums, and they have mediums on their programs all the time. I know many of you watching right now are members of the group. And if you have a child across the veil and you don't know about it, check out helpingparentsheal.org. Or if you know anybody, send them that way. They put out monthly newsletters filled with evidence and validations through mediums that our kids are still right here.
And they do sessions every week too. They have sessions from mediums from all over, which is really helpful. Yeah.
Their annual conference, I've spoken at it twice. I'm going to see you there, James.
Yes.
This August.
That'll be in August.
Yes. Celebration. You think, 1,000 bereaved parents in the audience. No, we call ourselves shining light parents, because our kids are our shining lights leading us forward. and then we become shining lights for others. But it's when people have been through that kind of grief and they realize they're not alone and their kids are still here, it becomes this powerful reunion across the veil and together for 3 days. There's nothing like it.
And Suzanne, maybe you've had this experience too. Kellee, I think you probably have. Many times when I brought through children, and many times it's been agreed upon before the incarnation, and it's that we're going to do this. I'm going to lead you to get you on your spiritual path.
That was my reading yesterday. Just yesterday. And I said, you may not want to hear this. This is really hard for a parent to hear, that they knew they were not going to live a full length life like we think it's going to be. But your daughter is telling me she had a feeling, and you know it because of something she said. And they said, yes, several times. So, got the goosebumps because
it forces us on our spiritual path. Many parents. A lady I met 30 years ago, and her son died in an explosion. And to this day, she said that was the greatest gift I could ever have had, because he put me on my spiritual path, and that was his journey. And we've all benefited from that. And it depends on how your perspective, right? We're back self-perspective again.
Yeah, that's my Susan. And I would not be doing this work if I hadn't, if we hadn't had to say goodbye to her. You know, who would ask for that at this level?
Yeah.
Yet the soul has a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
Have you had lucid dreams with her, Suzanne?
I did 2 days before she died.
What? Tell us about that.
Weren't you sitting on the couch when she came in? I thought you were sitting in the book on the couch in the living room, and you saw her at one point.
No, that actually in my documentary, Messages of Hope, we show a picture of me sitting on the couch, and she.
I remember this.
yeah. That was one of the only video we have of her. We put in the documentary, and I'm sitting on the couch, and then she walks. But she came to me 2 nights before she passed, and she came right up to me and she said, "The baby and I are fine." And I thought, that's so strange. I said, "Ty, we need to reach out to Susan." But we were sailing around Croatia in our boat. This was before people had cell phones, and we couldn't reach out to her right away. And well, by the time they called us 2 days later, she had probably already passed at that point when she came to me in the dream. So,
oh my gosh. So she was coming to you to letting you know she was fine, that they were fine.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you work with her spouse or the person, the father of the baby?
No, he was too bereaved to even deal with us afterwards. We completely lost contact. Yep.
And when you tune into her now, give us a sense. You feel what is she doing on the other side? You know?
Oh,
she's involved. There's a lot of things.
She helps me, but not so often. But she made it clear that she's got my back. So I love that. Yeah.
Wow. And Suzanne, from your perspective, what jobs or what do people do when they pass over on the other side? Where do they go? What is it like?
Well, if they fulfill any desires that they didn't get to fulfill here, but if they have a specialty, they're going to be helping people here who are still in that, such as musicians, inspiring musicians. I see so many young people who pass from drug overdose, helping people here to make better choices and overcome their addictions. People who pass by suicide, once they heal, they help people make better choices here. Scientists helping inspire people with new inventions. So that's what I've seen.
And I found something which is very interesting, which you might find is fascinating. And you may have had this experience. I was working somewhere. I think I was in Texas somewhere in Houston. And a gentleman came through and completed suicide, and his wife was in the audience. And that was the important part, though, which was very interesting. He came through and he was a military. He was from the military in his day, but he hadn't been when he completed suicide. And he said to his wife, this is really interesting. I was met with my brothers and sisters from the military. Some I didn't know at all, but there's a promise. There's this agreement made. They'll always be there for your brothers and sisters. And he said, they help me over, and they help a lot of military over because they're brothers and sisters. Have you had that experience yet of that?
I have not had that personal experience, but it gave me goosebumps because it's absolutely the way any military person would be.
And it was saluting, and it was beautiful. It was such a beautiful one. And I mean, there are things that come through in readings we just like go, wow. One lady said to me, which I think, I don't know if you had this experience, or Kellee, you have, and she was in a bit of a coma, and her daughter read her these books, spiritual books, and just read them to her. And the mother came through and said, I got every single word you read to me, even though I wasn't conscious. Those words were waiting for me when I passed over here.
Oh, nice.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So
That's beautiful.
thoughts continue on for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Suzanne, do you specialize on some level with people that have been in the military because of your background?
Almost every reading, somebody will come through and salute me.
Oh,
And it's
how
on
great is that?
There's your grandfather who was in the military, or those your dad or your brother or was in the military, and they salute if they were enlisted, and if they were an officer, I see a sword, and I can often tell what rank they were. It's pretty cool.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And that makes sense because they use your experience and those aspects of yourself. Wow, that's great. One last question for you. I want to ask: the people using your Awakened Way, the principles in your book, how can it change their lives?
Oh, it can save their lives, James. And this is, I had someone reach out to me, about 5 months ago, and she said, my daughter's going through such a hard time. She wants to take her own life. What do I do? And I just said, you can't save somebody just in an instant. And I thought, if only I could put this book in her hands, because the information in here to help us remember who we are could save your life. And so now we have that book, but I've had people tell me that these teachings have saved their life. So the book is for, I've narrowed it down to 3 groups of people: those who want off the planet, so those who, who are just pretty much in despair over anything, those who are deeply grieving someone's passing, and those who've been on the spiritual path seeking, and just can't seem to find it. So it's very multi-purpose, but with solutions and answers and practical tools for really such deep problems as that, and the surface problems. It's a very well-rounded book.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, again, you have so much information, knowledge, and wisdom in that book. It's incredible. It's like a life Bible.
Yeah, it's a fabulous book. Everybody should have a copy of this book, because you can pick it up on any page and really learn something so important that your soul is needing to learn at that time. It's fabulous, Suzanne. You did an incredible job.
Well, I give credit to Spirit, because when I went to read it for the Audible version, there were some times where I said, wow, those aren't my words. I wasn't consciously channeling, but each time I would sit to write, if it wasn't flowing, I would stop and I'd go and I'd leave. And then I'd come back, and then we'd just get in the flow, and an hour would pass in what seemed like 2 minutes, and there it would be. But it was different than when I sit and channel and these words come out. These were what felt like my words, but going back to read it, they're powerful.
Very, yeah. I felt it in my body. When I was reading certain words, like, whoa, that is, yeah.
And there's a light about it too. There's a lightness of being about it. The way you describe things, the way you are teaching people, it's a lightness about it.
Well, I tried to put what can be very complex and deep topics into words that people can finally say, oh my God, I get it. I finally get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the truth is really simple, but humans tend to make complex. They make the simple complex.
Yeah.
And it really is simple truths, isn't it? I mean, that's really what life is. Yeah. From a soul's perspective, right?
That's right.
I know you're doing a cruise too coming up, right?
I am. I'm thinking anybody who wants to spend 14 hours with me and 10 days in the Mediterranean. On the Mediterranean.
It's not only you, Suzanne, it's your guides. It's all of your guides as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. It's really about spending time with me and the guides, because we found out that when I did the Alaska cruise, people were coming back literally changed. I have an energy worker friend who worked on 4 people that were on the cruise and didn't know they'd been on the cruise. She said, what is with you people? You're embodying more of your soul. And they said, well, we just were on Suzanne's cruise. And I was like, wow. So this year I'm on this cruise, I'm going to be doing what I've been doing in my shift network classes and letting the guides lead each meditation each time we get together spontaneously. It's really a leap of faith to say, well, the topic is getting over fear. Now the guides will lead you on a meditation and not have any idea how it's going to come out. And it's absolutely magical. The energy, the way they lead us. So we're going to be doing things like that, plus visiting Spain, France, Italy, Greece, and Turkey. Wow.
And you do a lot of work. You're going to be at Omega Institute, right? You're going to be there, and which is a great place. And I mean, all over. So people should go to your website, Suzanne Geisemann.com, right? And
Right.
that's GIESENMANN.com. And you have a list of everything there, the dates there, how they get in contact with you.
Thank you.
And you're booked up for privates for how long?
I didn't put an end on it. I'm seeing clients now who've been waiting for 5 or 6 years. So
yeah, I would think so.
It's embarrassing, but helps me keep my sanity to not have the list that much farther into the future. So finally we'll get it under, I was going to say under control. The guide said, don't say that. You have no control. It'll be manageable and we'll see what happens.
You're just the instrument.
And your book is available on audio too, right?
Yeah, audio as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Kindle.
Yeah.
Good.
So thank you, Suzanne, for your time and sharing everything from the Awakened Way and sharing your life experiences so far. We'll have you on again, of course.
Oh,
definitely.
I wish you all the best of luck. I didn't realize this was the premiere episode.
You're the premiere episode.
Hey.
Yay.
People are ordering your book now.
I love that. Well, I thank you for having read it, and James, you helped endorse it, so I thank you.
You're very welcome.
I honor you both because we're, like you said, like-minded people who want to uphold the integrity of this work. It's life-changing, huh?
It's so important, yeah. So
Yeah. Thank you,
friends.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Kellee.
Thanks, James. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.